2 squad cars rolled to a stop in front of me, and the red and blue lights painted my driveway in alternating flashes. My home. Emily, my 16-year-old daughter, was standing motionless on our porch through the glass, her overnight luggage firmly gripped in her shaking hands. With their hands cautiously resting on their duty belts, 2 officers had already begun to approach her, and there was Patricia Hawthorne, the Maple Ridge Estates HOA president, standing at the border of my property with her arms folded and a smug smirk on her face. She was unaware that she had just committed the greatest error of her small-minded, power-hungry existence. Let me take a step back. For the past 12 years, I, David Garrison, have served as a circuit court judge in Jefferson County. Emily began dividing her time between her mother's house across town and my residence. Here in Maple Ridge, 3 years ago, following my divorce, everyone was happy with the arrangement, with the apparent exception of Patricia Hawthorne, who seemed to perceive every guest to our gated community as a possible danger to her little kingdom. During her 5 years as HOA president, Patricia turned what ought to have been a straightforward homeowners association into her own gang. She took great pride in catching residents in violation, enforced the rules with fanatical zeal, and committed all the rules to memory. After 6 p.m., garbage cans are visible from the street. That amounts to a $50 fine, half an inch to long grass. One more reference. She once discovered that my neighbor had left their Christmas decorations up into January 2nd, costing them $200. However, keeping an eye on who entered and left the area was her favorite activity. Even though she lacked the legal right to interrogate guests, she had established herself as the unofficial gatekeeper. She had harassed contractors, questioned delivery people, and followed strange cars around the area like a suburban vigilante. The most of us decided it wasn't worth the trouble to confront her, so we just rolled our eyes and ignored it. The day she targeted my kid was altered by it. Emily had just gotten here for her weekend getaway. She had walked the 2 blocks to my house, as she had done countless times before, when her mother had dropped her off at the gate. When I heard the noise outside, I was at my home office going over case files for the court on Monday. When I first heard the distinct crackle of police radios, I assumed it was just children playing in the street. My daughter was crying, and, surrounded by 2 officers, when I hurried to the front door, Emily was attempting to explain that I was her father and that she lived here. But Patricia kept cutting her off with her high-pitched voice. Patricia was making wild hand gestures. As she said, I saw her sneaking around the back of the house. She was obviously scouting the area. Even though I know everyone in this neighborhood, I have never seen her before. Clearly, this is a disturbed adolescent who wants to break into houses while their owners are at work. To their credit, the officers appeared dubious. Officer Chen, the taller person, was attempting to diffuse the tension. "Ma'am," she says, "this is where she resides. She has the house's key." "She obviously has a key," Patricia sneered. "She most likely created a copy or stole it." These children are cunning. I've watched the news about it. They target neighborhoods, determine when residents aren't home, and then launch an attack. I'll tell you what, I stopped a break-in here. You ought to give me thanks. At that point, I went outside. "Officers, is something wrong here?" When Patricia spotted me, her eyes brightened. "I'm so glad you're home, Judge Garrison. I just saw this. Girl, attempting to enter your home, do not be concerned." I dialed 9111 right away. I took my money out of my pocket and proceeded quietly down the porch steps. "Officers, that won't be required. This is Emily, my daughter." I gave my judicial identification card and driver's license to Officer Chan. "She is here for the weekend of her court-mandated visit." Immediately, the atmosphere changed. As Officer Chen looked over my credentials, his eyes widened a little. In fact, his partner, a younger policeman with the badge Mitchell, retreated a little. Naturally, they were both familiar with me. Their department had been involved in scores of cases that I had presided over. Officer Chen said, "Judge Garrison," in a more professional and respectful tone, "I'm sorry for any confusion. A call regarding a possible burglary in progress was received by us." Patricia's arrogant look started to change. "Hold on. What? No, that isn't possible. This is a girl I've never seen before. There is no way she could." I turned to face her and said, "M. Hawthorne," using the same commanding tone I had in my courtroom. "This is Emily, my daughter." For the past 3 years, she has come to see me every other weekend. Her right to be here is less important than your ability to observe, as evidenced by the fact that you have never seen her before." Patricia got red in the face. "So, how was I meant to know?" "She was wandering around the rear of the home in a suspicious manner. The rear of the house." I arched my brow. "Are you referring to the route that leads from the street to our front door?" "She uses that one, as she is aware that I keep the side gate locked." Emily's voice still trembled with passion, but she had finally found it. She refused to listen when I tried to tell her. "Dad, I said I was your daughter." She would constantly yell at me to leave the property, or she would call the police. She then went ahead and did it. Officer Mitchell had already started to take out his notebook. "Did this young woman introduce herself to you before you dialed 911, Ms. Hawthorne?" Like a fish out of water, Patricia's mouth moved back and forth. She may have stated something, but I didn't think she was telling the truth. Anyone could identify as a person's daughter. I was simply exercising caution. These days, you can't be too cautious. Officer Chan actually said, "You can be too careful. It is illegal to file a fraudulent police complaint, Ms. Hawthorne. You were really watching a teenager enter her father's house with permission when you called 911 to report a burglary in progress." Patricia objected, saying that wasn't untrue. However, the confidence in her voice had diminished. I really did believe. I exclaimed in a voice that might break glass, "You really think that harassment would be mistaken for a neighborhood watch? How many other residents' children have you called the police on, Miss Hawthorne? How many real tourists have you scared away with your vigilante tactics?" The officers looked at each other. It is evident that Patricia's obsessive actions were not new to them. Officer Mitchell shuffled his notebook. "In fact, Judge Garrison, for the past year, we have answered multiple calls from Ms. Hawthorne. Majority of them proved to be false alarms." Patricia insisted, "I'm trying to keep this neighborhood safe," but she was now pulling away, her arms hanging limply at her sides instead of crossed. "No," I told her, "you're attempting to dominate this community. There is a distinction. You also crossed a line today. You did more than just annoy a guest. A minor was traumatized by you. My minor, my daughter." Officer Chen moved to the front. "Hawthorne Ms., for abusing emergency services. I'm formally warning you. There will be documentation of this incident. Criminal charges may be brought against you if there is a pattern of false reports." Patricia's cheeks had turned pale after turning red. "That is not possible. I am the president of the HOA. I interrupted you to say that I had an obligation to oversee the common spaces and implement the genuine HOA bylaws. You are not authorized to function as law enforcement anywhere under those bylaws. I should also be aware. Before buying this house, I carefully examined them." I looked over to the officers. "Gentlemen, I will be formally complaining to the HOA board as well as to your department. It is necessary to formally address this practice." Officer Chin stated, "That's your honor and your right." He looked back at Patricia again. "I advise you, ma'am, to become familiar with the definition of a true emergency. It is a big issue when police resources are wasted." Patricia appeared to be still as the officers made their way back to their cars. I noticed a few neighbors nodding in agreement as the tiny group of people who had assembled to witness the spectacle started to disperse. It seems that I wasn't the only one who had grown tired of Patricia's terrifying reign. "It's not over yet." At last, Patricia was able to sputter. "I'll talk about this at the upcoming board meeting. There are processes that must be followed before your daughter is permitted to visit. Registration of guests and appropriate notifications," I said, actually, and took out my phone. "Let's talk about this now. I think I have Jennifer Rodriguez, a board member, on speed dial. You are aware that she is an attorney. The story of how the HOA president called the police on a resident's child would undoubtedly pique her curiosity the moment I started looking through my contacts." Patricia's eyes grew wide. "It's not required. This is something we can manage internally, Dotto." "I believe that is essential," I responded, locating Jennifer's phone number. "You see, Miss Hawthorne, you've been acting as though you have unrestricted power because of your position, yet every organization, including a homeowners association, has checks and balances." To put it mildly, the ensuing weeks were intriguing. As promised, I formally complained to the HOA board and the police department. Like wildfire, the story swept around Maple Ridge. Judge Garrison's daughter had been the target of a police call from Patricia Hawthorne, the stern HOA president. One of the county's most esteemed legal leaders had just been enraged with the woman who loves to brag about her connections and power. 2 weeks later, the emergency board meeting took place. Many of the people who crowded the community clubhouse had personal tales of Patricia's overreach. They got up to talk one by one. The elderly Mr. Patterson was present. He had been punished for 10 minutes of keeping his grandson's bicycle in his driveway, then revealed that Patricia had reported their family reunion to the police, saying, "It was an unapproved meeting." Even the reserved Mrs. Foster came forward to report that she had been harassed because of the flowers she chose for her mailbox. Patricia, who usually exudes a powerful presence, sat at the board table looking protective and little. The vote of no confidence was unanimous when it came time. Even her previous board allies were no longer able to defend her actions. But it was the county prosecutor's office that brought about the actual repercussions. They chose to accuse Patricia of abusing emergency services after looking into the pattern of fraudulent claims. Nobody failed to notice the irony. The woman who enjoyed phoning the police was now being charged with a crime. I ran across Patricia on the morning of her arraignment in the courtroom corridor. She didn't appear the same without her typical shield of self-righteousness. Her attorney, a tense young man who undoubtedly wished he had accepted any other case, was attempting to clarify the plea agreement the prosecutor had proposed, and a $5,000 fine, plus you'll be barred from any HOA leadership position for 5 years, he said, after 50 hours of community service. Patricia wrinkled her face. $5,000. She was exiled from her realm for 5 years. She glanced up as I passed by, and our gazes briefly locked. There was no need for me to say something scathing or twist the knife a bit more. Justice had found its way, as it usually does, and the law had spoken. She admitted the allegations in a scarcely audible voice when she entered a no contest plea that morning. Patricia's shoulders slumped in defeat as the court pronounced the sentencing, the fine, the community service, and the expulsion from HOA leadership, $5,000. As she stood there, realizing that her reign of petty terror had cost her dearly, the number seemed to reverberate throughout the courtroom.